Kawaki has unleashed everything, his full Otsutsuki power, his karma seal, his rage, his desperation. Blow after blow, it was tearing through Jura's body, and yet Jura just endured. He rebuilt, he rose, and then he sat down on a throne of his own making, towering above Kawaki like a god, peering down at an insect. And Jura asked only one question: Naruto Uzumaki, he isn't really dead, is he? In that one moment, the boy who had built an entire life based upon the lie of being Naruto's son and Boruto having killed Naruto, he now found himself looking up at the very deity-like figure who holds the very means to destroy everything that Kawaki had built. Chapter 24 is not just a fight. Instead, it is a terrifying shift. And not just power, but also in the world around Boruto and Kawaki. It is a psychological reckoning, and Kawaki might finally be put on the fast track to us facing some justice. Let's break down every chilling detail of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 24. So we open up the story hopping into a time machine that takes us all the way back to the part of the conversation that Boruto and Kawaki had in Chapter 15 of 2 Blue Vortex that we didn't get to see conclude. Boruto informs Kawaki that the coming battles in the Land of Wind against the Shinju, they're fast approaching, and he tells him that once he gets his limiters removed, he needs to go to the battlefield and Boruto will be there, and the two of them, they can battle Jura. However, being the ever pragmatic and blunt person that he is, Kawaki informs Boruto that even though it was just a couple of hits, back when Jura hit Kawaki with that crispy two-piece Popeye's chicken combo attack, Kawaki caught a glimpse of Jura's true power, and that was all Kawaki needed to know that Jura is in a different tier of power than Boruto believes, that Boruto's underestimating Jura, outright saying they can't win if they team up, limiters or no limiters. That's where we see a rather interesting moment from Boruto. He gives Kawaki one of his flying Raijin markers and says that in that case, their goal should be finding a way to stay alive during the battle, since it might be more realistic given who it is that they're going up against, and this is what makes Boruto's decision so very bold. He literally tells Kawaki how his jutsu works, in particular the weaknesses of it, something that a shinobi is supposed to guard, which is both a show of how he still trusts Kawaki, viewing him as a brother, while also a bit heartbreaking because we know where this story ultimately goes. Eventually, Boruto versus Kawaki will happen, and Boruto just gave Kawaki information that he can later use against him. Boruto informs Kawaki that he needs to be able to sense the markers, and that the further away they are, the more time he needs to concentrate on finding the marker, and that while in battle, he can't properly sense that far from a distance, which then transitions us over to the main battle where Kawaki states he will buy Boruto the time he needs, and we see Jura rapidly descending towards Kawaki, and that's where the action goes into full gear, and we see what a newly powered up Kawaki is truly capable of doing. When Jura shoots his Bijudama at Kawaki, he quickly raises his hand and absorbs the blast, but Jura takes advantage of the sheer size of the Bijudama, obstructing Kawaki's field of vision to get behind him. However, just as Jura prepares to snatch Kawaki, he expertly uses his Kokugan in order to shrink down to 1 inch in size, one of the many hacks abilities that he inherited from Ishiki that makes him every bit of the trouble to deal with that Jigen was for Naruto and Sasuke, where he made them beg for mercy in Boruto episode 204. Because what can you do against someone who can absorb your jutsu, shrink your jutsu, and then shrink himself whenever you get too close to attacking him? It's not impossible to beat that person, but it becomes a whole lot more difficult than you would have liked. This is made even more so the case when you realize that Kawaki has shrank himself down and quickly zipped away from the area, and while doing that, he has simultaneously summoned 4 giant chakra disruption cubes to try to attack Jura, and it's brilliant. Even if it doesn't smash Jura with the cubes themselves, they have disruption abilities that negate the sensory abilities of anybody in the immediate vicinity of the cubes, which if Jura had sensory abilities that we don't know that he has, then he couldn't use them while in the immediate reach of those cubes. Jura quickly shoots out one of the disruption cubes while Boruto flies away to safety. During doing his best to suppress his karma seal to avoid Momoshiki from emerging, to make an already chaotic battlefield even more hectic. It's at this moment that Kawaki swoops in, and this time he's using the ninja tech in his body to transform it into that giant wooden claw to smash Ishiki and send him flying backwards with the force of the attack and back into the direction of the remaining chakra cubes that Jura did not destroy. And just as Jura is looking around the giant dust clouds that are blocking his vision, Kawaki has already shrank. He zipped over behind Jura, resized, and this time he slammed his ninja tech arm into Jura from behind, purposely not letting up, doing everything he can to buy board till the time needed to lock onto the location with his flying Raijin marker. However, Jura quickly rebounds from getting thrown around by Kawaki, and he jumps off a nearby hill, uses the momentum, and he flies back into the air to try to close the gap on Kawaki, who just narrowly blocks Jura's middle finger attack meant to penetrate Kawaki. The two of them quickly begin going back and forth with a parry of attacks, and Jura, for a man on one leg at this point adjusting in real time, it is making this whole back and forth even more impressive considering the movements. But unfortunately for Jura, Kawaki isn't just a guy swinging a BBCR around. When he whips out that big black chakra rod, it does more than penetrate Jura with its force, but it also spits out multiple shots of chakra into Jura's body. Even worse, when Kawaki's shooting those blasts off from the chakra rods, it's the method in which he does so that makes this entire sequence so devious. Kawaki wasn't just going for body shots. He was attacking the liver of Jura, which is a next level IQ to weigh down your enemy because it is crucial damage, and shooting the chakra blast through the end of the chakra rod into that section of the body just shows you that Kawaki, even though he's trying to buy time, he is still fighting with killing intent. And somewhere from deep down below, that monk formerly known as Jigen is looking up at Kawaki, swinging that chakra rod around, and he's going, "That's my boy," because when Jigen used to train Kawaki, he got that big black chakra rod smashed into his face a lot. What we're seeing is the very combat style that is ingrained into Kawaki through years of beatings at the hand of Jigen, but now that he has Ishiki's karma seal cut on, he's also drawing on Ishiki's combat experience as well. But what's interesting is that this method of fighting, shooting the chakra blast through the chakra rods, isn't something we ever saw Ishiki or Jigen do, which is a shame, but it also speaks a large volume to the testament of the amount of power that Jigen and Ishiki were holding back when they were playing around with Naruto and Sasuke. The two wonder reincarnation twins, Naruto and Sasuke, they weren't able to force those guys to go as deep into their bag as Jura is making Kawaki do. Meanwhile, Boruto watches the scene and he's gasping for air as he's holding onto his arm to fight off the karma seal, telling himself to calm down, and that's where we see a change occurring. The lines of his karma seal, they used to be thick. They have now begun to recede back to their normal form into the palm of his hand, and it isn't because of anything that Boruto himself has done. Instead, it is Kawaki who has now cut off his karma seal, thus breaking the resonance of their karma. Kawaki slowly marches forward towards Jura, who has several holes blown into him, perhaps a little too overconfident, and as he's doing so, we see the ninja tech in Kawaki's body being brought into focus. In particular, the ninja tech in his eyes. Sumire and Amado, they're watching the battle unfold, and Sumire, she is of the belief that Kawaki is not only pressuring Jura, but her words, "At this rate, he might," it implies that she truly believes Kawaki has a way to kill Jura, a chance to do the impossible. But Amado, that sussy baka, he knows better. And sure enough, Jura, despite having his side blown off and having several holes in his body, he's less worried about Kawaki and he's more worried about opening up his book in order to catch up on his reading. The most unserious villain is about to start flexing. He flips to the pages that he has on Kawaki and he compares what is written down about Kawaki's combat power to what he just experienced, and we see Jura's fatal flaw begin to pop up with this character. He's curious. He wants to know how Kawaki powered up so quickly, and then as he's watching Kawaki, he realizes the truth. This isn't just a power-up. It's a lot more than that. It's a response to that feeling of something precious being threatened, and he's beginning to connect the dots. Himawari powered up when it was clear that Inojin was going to die. Sarada powered up in response to Yodo's death, and the prodding of Yodo for Sarada to embrace her feelings for Boruto. In both cases, the two girls who transformed into beings capable of far greater levels of power than they had previously shown. That was a big deal. And as Sumire is more focused on the fact that Sarde got a power-up that she didn't know about, Jura states that he sees a connection. It's that pesky word called love that made them even stronger, and he can't understand it and how it makes shinobi stronger. And based on the comments that I've seen surrounding this arc, where people don't truly grasp how love leads to these power-ups and why Ikimoto is continuously hammering home the theme of love, I want to take a minute to explain something that might be lost in translation, because I know for a lot of people it's been a while since they've read Naruto or even gone back and watched Naruto. So allow me to explain. This isn't Ikimoto trying his hands at shoujo romance slop writing, where there's a power of romantic feelings that leads to power amp. While you can argue he's dabbling in something like that, what this is truly at its core, it is a continuation of what we were told several times in Naruto's manga. The third Hokage told us on 3 different occasions in Naruto Part 1. The moment where a shinobi can call forth their most dazzling strength, their true power, their hidden power, is when they are fighting to protect someone or something precious to them. It can be romantic reasons, like we saw in the Minato one-shot chapter where Minato powered up in order to save Kushina from Kurama. It can be for the love of one's village, like we saw when Hiruzen found strength against Orochimaru long after Hiruzen's body had begun to give out. It can be for the love of the next generation, like we saw Might Guy do against Madara and Naruto do when he protected the village from Momoshiki at the tuning exams. It's as Haku told Naruto in the very first arc of the series. When a person has something that they wish to protect, they tap into their true power. The irony of the situation is that you have 2 people in a conversation, albeit a one-sided one, about how love brings forth power in shinobi, yet neither of them are shinobi and they don't understand the shinobi way of doing things. Now, I want to draw your attention to this irony because this is very intentional by Ikimoto. Jura is seeking answers, and Kawaki, despite being the son of a shinobi, his drunken father who sold him to Jigen, and having pretended to be the son of the Hokage and lived in a ninja village for the last 3 years, Kawaki does not understand that either, which makes his response so poetic. Kawaki calls Jura a pest, and he cuts on his Koma and fires a chakra blast through his ninja attack at Jura at point blank range with the intention to kill him. However, out the smoke rises Jura, who not only has repaired himself using the tree roots from that Ten Tails dimension, but the guy has made himself a throne high into the air, and he is ore farming by crossing his legs and holding up a finger to his upper lip, telling Kawaki that he doesn't truly want to fight. He merely wants to converse with him, and the topic of conversation is how Kawaki decided to save Boruto, which strikes Jura as odd because the only thing Jura ever read that Kawaki cared about was Naruto Uzumaki, and as Jura is looking down at Kawaki from his throne high up in the sky, he's putting the pieces together. However, what's interesting here is just the imagery itself. I want to bring your attention to that. Jura is high up on that throne, looking down at Kawaki in a judgmental way, like a god looking down at the mere mortals beneath his feet. It shows a distance between the two, while also in a poetic way having Jura be the judge who is forcing Kawaki to own up to the most heinous lie that he's told for the last 3 years, which is the death of Naruto and that Boruto killed him, when in reality, Naruto has been sealed away. If you've ever been in a courtroom, which I pray none of you guys have, you get the feeling that I'm talking about. When you're looking up at a judge and you're hoping that they take it easy on you, but you're not certain. That's where Kawaki is right now, but Jura isn't one to dish out mercy. He tells Kawaki that he knows Naruto is alive, and he smiles as he says it because Kawaki's face gave the truth away. Jura reveals that he still maintains the plan to consume Naruto, and he gives his reason for it. Naruto is the intermediary between the tailed beasts, their hearts and their minds. That's what he's after. For a reminder, I know somebody's gonna say, well, Naruto doesn't have Biju Chakra. Boruto's anime confirmed it in episode 219. Boruto's anime and manga, they're 2 different continuities according to Boruto's editor. You cannot use what's in the anime for the manga. But what Jura says here makes complete sense when you stop and think about it and you just go by Naruto's manga. In Naruto chapter 692, after Hagoromo had already taken the chakra seals from Naruto and Sasuke, which he does the moment that Kaguya is defeated. He tells the 9 Biju that are gathered that a small piece of their chakra resides in Naruto. He is a gathering place for them, and that Kurama is the overseer of that Biju sanctuary for them to gather. Naruto, by Hagoromo's own words, has the chakra of the 9 Biju, and we see him tap into some of that chakra in the battle with Delta, where he tries to use lava release Rasen Shuriken against Delta when he tried to cut off her legs to immobilize her until he learned that she could regenerate. Losing Kurama means losing the overseer to that sanctuary, the same way that Kawaki losing the Koma seal kept him from getting Ishiki's power in combat. The same analogy that Amato gave to Kawaki about Ishiki applies here. I want you to think about a house. The previous owner of the house left with a key and then they died. That was the only key, yet everything in the house is still there waiting to be accessed if you can get hold of a key. Kawaki's house had Ishiki's chakra in it. Naruto's house had the chakra of the other 8 Biju. But just as Kawaki had no key with the Koma seal gone, Naruto had no key with Kurama gone, since he is the gatekeeper to that sanctuary. Jura wanting Naruto, and likely Himawari, feels to a lesser degree like a plotline from Naruto. Someone in search of Biju chakra inside of a Jinchuriki. It's a very specific line here by Jura, one that gives him a good reason to hold off on killing Kawaki in the future, despite Kawaki's massive power increase, as well as a further reason to look into Himawari, because Jura will now question why Himawari has one of the tailed beasts that should be inside of Naruto. I bring that up to say this is another example of what Kashin Koji previously warned Boruto about. When you change the future, a new path pops up. Jura previously had not made that connection, but now seeing Kawaki and knowing for himself that Naruto is alive, it has potentially opened up more branches that Koji has to begin coming up with counters for, if he can do so. That leads to Boruto stepping in right as Kawaki begins to charge, and Jura looks a bit let down that Boruto is here and is able to use the flying Raijin to teleport them away. But before they leave, Kawaki channels some of that same energy that the Road to the Ninja version of Hinata that Naruto series Masashi Kishimoto created when he did that special manga chapter for the Road to the Ninja, as well as the storyboards for Naruto Shippuden's movie, The Road to the Ninja. Kawaki flips off Jura in the process of swearing to kill him the next time they meet. That brings us back to Konohamaru, who is with Delta, and we get a comedic scene where Delta tells Konohamaru not to stand so close to that flying Raijin marker, and seconds later, Konohamaru gets his face stepped on by Kawaki the same way that Boruto stepped on Code's face, and we see a bit of comedy, with Konohamaru shouting at Kawaki for making his face a doormat for Kawaki's dirty shoes, and probably for getting some sand in his eye in the process. But Boruto quickly apologizes for the teleportation gaffe and asks about the Thorn Soul Bulb of Matsuri and says they need to head back to Konoha, likely to revive Moegi by using the Thorn Soul Bulb. As this is going on, we get another dark update about how Boruto changed the timeline. Ada seems relieved that everything's working out, but Kashin Koji tells her Boruto changed the future and she doesn't need to be worried about Boruto anymore. She needs to be worried about herself, because he reveals what he saw in the future, and it was Mamushi being on the move going after Ada specifically, which that grosses her out, but she has every reason to be afraid. If we go back to the last chapter, when Kashin Koji got his timeline update, if you look very closely at the images that Koji saw, one of the images was a future that showed Mamushi somewhere. We don't know where. And he had several copies of himself in the background, and now we have the context. He was confronting Ada, which means her one-way, all-expenses-paid ticket to Mamushi Island comes with a complimentary bottle of baby oil, a hot tub of baby oil, Mamushi likely blowing up a car that belonged to Kawaki while he's playing a Kid Cudi song, and Mamushi Island flight logs and Mamushi Island client list won't ever be found because Ada simps, Code, and Konohamaru were the ones who wrote the list in order to set Mamushi up. If you know what that's a reference for, you are a 1% subscriber here on the channel, and you can join all the monkeys in the pocket dimension writing hashtag Mamushi Party, hashtag Super Simp, hashtag Super Code Shit down in the comment section below. Jokes aside though, for as bad as this looks for Ada, at least this means that Damon versus Mamushi is finally about to be coming in the future, but now we have to ask a question. Ken Damon, a boy who said in chapter 80 of Boruto Naruto Next Generations he's never fought at full power. Ken Damon actually went against Mamushi, and that's going to be interesting, particularly given the meaning behind Mamushi's name. With him being named after the most venomous snake in Japan, you have to wonder what will happen to Damon or Ada when he sinks his fangs deep inside of them. Back at the Shinju hideout, we see Hidari has joined Jura's book club, and as he's reading the books, we see Hidari channeling some of Sasuke's personality as he's speaking to Jura, who seems very pleased by his interaction with Kawaki, and Hidari decides to use the word of the day that he's learned, which the word of the day today is disgusting, and he states that he finds it disgusting that Jura is behaving in this way, which, for context, in the Q&A that celebrated the Boruto manga having 9 years of serialization, Ikimoto revealed that the personalities of the Shinju are a direct reflection of the true nature of the person whose chakra they are made from. Hence, we're seeing a bit of those Sasuke tendencies starting to show up inside of Hidari, which, to learn more, you can click this video up top for the breakdown of what Ikimoto said, or you can click here down below to see my new Dandadan video explaining the evil eye on my Anime Explained channel, or you can click here on the left to check out the 2 Blue Vortex chapter reviews if you need to catch up on the series.